Traffic were an English rock band who were fronted by Steve Winwood, who also had a very successful solo career. They were formed in 1967 and released 2 albums and had 4 different lineups before breaking up in 1969, 2 years later, when Steve Winwood left them to form Blind Faith. They managed to have an album released in The Gap, which was basically a collection of outputs and some live stuff, and then reformed again in the next year, 1970, when Blind Faith fell apart. This time, they managed to last until 1974, in which time they released 4 albums and had 8 different lineups. They stayed unformed for a while and reformed again in 1994. And during this incarnation, they managed 1 album and 2 lineups, and they disbanded, all in 1994. They reformed again in 2004, but it was very briefly. It was just for their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They managed to only have 1 lineup at the event, so well done them. They didn't release any albums, fairly obviously. They have been historically much more successful in the US than in the UK. Hi, my name's Dan. So this is the 5th album by Traffic, and it's my first listen to it. And although I have encountered them before, I reviewed their next album after this, John Barleycorn Must Die, for a blog that I used to have before I started doing video reviews. But I had forgotten who they were, despite the fact that they're also quite often labelled as prog. I'd forgotten. I think the problem is that I confused them because of the somewhat similarity of the name with the Tourists, who were kind of the precursor band before the Eurythmics. So I kind of thought they were going to be late 70s new wave stuff. Obviously, they're not, and I was completely wrong. So this album was the first album that they released after reforming after the Blind Faith break, which Steve Winwood on. Both Wikipedia and Acclaimed Music, where this list has come from, list it as prog rock. I don't like spending ages kind of arguing the details of genre boundaries and classification. Prog rock is a bit of my specialist area, really. I'm likely to give a counter argument here and say that I think it's more art rock than prog rock, but it's probably in the boundary between the two. And as I say, it's not really that important. They just made music. It's only people like me that come along afterwards and try and put labels on it. So musically, it's definitely rock. It's not extreme prog, so it's not inaccessible. It's got normal rhythms, it's got normal harmonies, but it does have some extended songs, and it does have quite a bit of taking the time over the music, which was is and was a characteristic of prog. Some of it actually sounds quite like a sub-classification of prog called the Canterbury scene, which had a tendency towards kind of gentleness. And so particularly the bits where the flute are in here have that kind of laid-back, gentle feel, which has also got influences from classical, yes, jazz, particularly in the drumming, I'd say here, and folk, just kind of more of an acoustic and pastoral is a really good word for this feel. Some of it I would then claim is more art rock, and it has a feel of, I'm particularly reminded of Supertramp at times, partly because there's quite a bit of piano going on in the way that's done, but also Fleetwood Mac. And so you might argue with me, I would class both of those as art rock. I would also say, yeah, shades of maybe 10cc, but not quite as much with that. They've got, in this album, I think it's the first time they had a dedicated percussionist. That's interesting because he added quite a bit to it. So musically, overall, I would say I found it interesting. It leans to longer songs and jamming with the groove at times, which are things that, I guess it's dependent on the groove. If I like the groove, I'm going to like that. If I don't like the groove, I'm going to get a bit bored. But I did, quite like the feel of it. There's some interesting kind of interplay of stuff going on at times. And so there's a few of the tracks on here are quite long, which is something that often goes down well with me. So Steve Winwood sings. There are 6 tracks on this album. Steve Winwood sings 4 lead vocals, and Jim Capaldi sings lead on a couple of the songs. I found I wasn't hugely bothered by the words, or not hugely. Um, they didn't make a huge impact in that kind of one. Oh yes, that's what this is talking about. I felt like I didn't really understand "Low Spark of High Heeled Boys," which is the title track here. There are some theories around, but I'm not entirely sure about some of those. Light Up or Leave Me Alone, I suspect is some kind of drug reference, but again, I'm not sure. Rainmaker is interesting, but I really don't have much of an idea what it is. I think this is probably because I focused in my listening on the music because I was enjoying it. And I did. I really enjoyed it musically. It hit a sweet spot for me in terms of, this kind of, what can I say? It was just obviously enjoying the music. It's kind of whatever the opposite of aggressive is. It's quite pacific. That's not a great word, is it, for it? But yeah, and it just felt it had subtlety to it in a way that was accessible and I got into quite nicely, quite quickly. So this is going to get a really good score from me because I enjoyed it quite a lot. And I'd love to know what you thought of it. So please do let me know. And by leaving me a comment, alternatively, you could try and do it in skywriting with my house, but I'm not going to tell you what my address is, so maybe leaving a comment is the best way. And that's it from me for now.
Sitting in a transit all night long, playing cards and a rock and ride. The road's much too long, seems like I'm wasting my time. Wish I was home again, sipping my wine, and I'm